From the Soapbox is the official podcast for the American Animal Hospital Association's digital newsroom, Trends. Here, we take inspiration from the familiar soap notes, but instead of looking at the condition of a patient, we're diagnosing and discussing the state of the veterinary industry. We'll chat about the challenges, trends, and innovations shaping the veterinary world with voices from across the community. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Singler. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of From the Soapbox. My guest today is Jessica Sewell, a licensed veterinary technician, a former practice manager, the National Director of Career Progression for Veterinary Technicians and Assistants for VCA, and the chair of the Georgia State Board of Veterinary Medicine. I know Veterinary Technician Appreciation Week officially was last week, but we're stretching the celebration out because veterinary technicians deserve to be celebrated all year round. With that in mind, I'm thrilled to share this conversation I had with Jessica because it touches on so many important topics. She shared her journey from kennel assistant through different roles in clinical practice and how the educational programs and degrees she pursued have opened new doors for her in her career. I also asked her about the ways she's worked to support veterinary technicians and assistants who want to stay and progress in vet med and change their job into a fulfilling career. She also touched on technician utilization, or as she likes to call it, technician optimization, trust between team members, and how she has been able to shatter barriers and participate in organized veterinary medicine in ways that have not always been available to veterinary technicians. Get ready to be inspired by the things she has done and by the ideas she has to support veterinary technicians and assistants and move our profession forward. Here she is, getting her time to talk from the soapbox, Jessica Sewell. Jessica Sewell, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that we're able to really get to chat with you because I know that when I first met you, you have such an amazing history, such an amazing background of all the things that you've done within veterinary medicine. I'd love to start out by just having you share some of your vet med journey, some of your sort of origin story with our audience, just so that everyone can know kind of where you started, kind of how you've progressed and moved along the way, and where you are now, whatever you want to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So there was never a question for me what I wanted to do. Since I was little, I knew what I wanted to do. So I started out in kennels, cleaning kennels as a kennel assistant. And I think that's where a lot of us start out. Technicians, assistants, veterinarians.
That's where I started.
So yes, mucking stalls, right? So it's like, don't look past those kennel assistants. Invest in those people because they are likely the future of veterinary medicine. So I started out in kennels when I was 17. And then I became a CSR. And then a veterinary assistant. You're sitting at the front desk and you're like, oh, what's going on back there? Oh, that looks like fun. So I became a veterinary assistant. And then I started out, veterinary technology is relatively new, compared to the rest of the profession. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to vet school, right? So I started out like going to pre-vet, kind of went for a year, and I'm like, this isn't my jam. This isn't my jam. And luckily, I worked at a very progressive general practice, primary care, and we hosted veterinary technology students from the local college. And I kind of asked, like, hey, like, what are you doing here? What is it that you do? And I was like, I think this might be my jam. So I applied, and the rest is history. That's where it started for me. I graduated in 2003 with my associates in veterinary technology, got licensed in Georgia in 2003. And when I was in, back when I'm dating myself a little bit, but back when I was getting my associates, they didn't have online programs. It was all brick and mortar. So I was in school Monday through Friday. Don't tell anyone. I did skip class sometimes to work. Like if we had like a really cool case, I would like show up late to class because I want to see the surgery, but I was kind of like nerding out, But I was in school Monday through Friday. So I ended up working nights, holidays, and weekends, emergency. And that's kind of where I fell in love with emergency and critical care. Um, so I then got offered a job at Auburn University. I was there for some CE. I got offered a job at Auburn University as an ICU supervisor. Still came home on the weekends back to Georgia to do relief work and things like that. Moved back to Georgia and started a bachelor's degree. So I got my bachelor's degree. At that time, I was a technician supervisor, kind of an assistant hospital manager. And so I got started on my bachelor's degree, and it was a clinical with a focus in hospital management. So then I became a hospital manager. So I was a new hospital manager while getting my bachelor's degree. And I graduated with that in like 2010 or 11. And then fast forward, and I moved out of emergency critical care referral and moved into a larger primary care hospital. And then I went to another hospital that kind of up in the mountains. So that was interesting. That was a really good experience. And then I became I worked for VCA. I've been with VCA for 20 years, just celebrated my anniversary in April. And thank you. And I'm so blessed and fortunate to work for a company and work with a team that just is so supportive. They support all of my shenanigans that I do, outside of my day job with them. They're just so supportive throughout my entire journey. So I consider myself super blessed. So I became a regional technician director, and it was 12 states. And it was a new role. So 12 states, 100 hospitals, primary care and specialty. And I did that for, I guess 5 years, maybe, traveling all the time. Got to meet it, always the same, and never the same people, never the same environment, right? You're always seeing like new things, meeting new people. And then I've been in the role I am in now for 3 years next month. And I'm the National Director of Career Progression for credentialed veterinary technicians and veterinary assistants. And that is, our investment in providing clear, transparent clinical paths for those who do not want to go into management. If they want to go into management or supervise, be a supervisor, that's great. There's development opportunities and a path for that. But I think all too often, and I'm probably like skipping ahead to like something else that we were going to talk about later, but it's a segue. I think all too often we in clinical practice, okay, well, what's my next step? Okay, well, my next step is to be a manager. Okay, well, that's what I'll do then, right? And that's not for everybody. That being a manager, it's a great responsibility because you're no longer just caring for the patients. You're caring for the people who care for the patients as well. And that's a great responsibility. And everybody's not wired to do it. So if it's not something that you're passionate about doing and you're like, yes, I want this as my next step, then if you are, great, we'll get you there. But if you're not, like, let's not settle for just, because it's the next step. Let's find something clinically that really floats your boat and lights your fire. Because if you're not happy, you're not going to feel fulfilled, and your work, your output, your results are going to reflect that, right? So that I appreciate the role that I'm in now, because it's very necessary, providing that clinical path for our technicians and our assistants that want to remain in hospitals and taking care of patients.
Yeah, I love that you highlighted that, and that is definitely something that I wanna ask you more about. But I wanted to touch on your degrees that you've gotten, because you said
Uh-huh.
you got an associate's, and then you went back and got a bachelor's, and then you went and got a master's degree. Um,
Yes.
can you share, like, what prompted you to do that? Like, how did you make those decisions? How did you just decide, hey, like, I think um, I need to go get another degree. I need to, you know, go back to school. I need to study something else. Was it like a particular job that you were like, oh, I can't get this job unless I have this degree? Or was it more of a kind of like, I'm not sure what I want to do. Like, maybe if I can study more,
Mhm.
I will figure out from there what I want to do. Like, what was that? What was that
Okay.
process like for you?
I wish I could say I put that much thought into it. Um, it was just, it's just something it was for me, a personal accomplishment. Same with my bachelor's, right? It was just something I wanted to do. And it was an accomplishment for me. And, I feel like in this profession, because there are many career paths, there are. We don't do a great job of talking about them, but they are out there. So I think we compare ourselves to people that we meet, influencers, people we may see on social media, like, oh, that's what I want to do next, right? But we got to stop doing that. We've got to start just being the very best versions of ourselves that we can be the very best veterinarian, very best veterinary technician, very best veterinary assistant that we can be. And that is just, I feel like when we enter this profession, that's a commitment that we make. Lifelong learning, and you always want to, we should always be a work in progress, right? Not just as professionally, but as people too. So that was just a way. I'm like, okay, this is going to make me a better version of me, be able to provide the very best patient care I can. And it's great networking, right? You meet so many people and so many opportunities come your way. So it wasn't really about, I've never had to get a degree to get a job. It's just always been, I want to take my knowledge to the next level, or I just want to be the best version of me that I can be. So that was I got my master's in veterinary clinical care from Lincoln Memorial University's College of Veterinary Medicine. I graduated with the inaugural class. It'll be 2 years ago, in December. And it was a great experience. And, I can't say enough about like the faculty and the program. Same with St. Petersburg, incredible experience. And I think, and also it was the first year, so it's not perfect, right? We know there's like, again, things are always going to be changing and improving. So to be a part of that first class, and they relied on us for feedback and, hey, what do you think about this? What can we do differently? I think that was a great experience. So that's I wish I could say that, it was a strategy, but really it just all boiled down to the fact that I just want to always be improving, growing, continued learning and development. And it's something that I wanted to do for myself, for a personal accomplishment.
Yeah, but that's a strategy right there. I mean, learning for the sake of learning is still, I mean, not even still, is a really good thing. And learning to better yourself, learning to feel more fulfilled in what you're already doing. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't always have to be like, oh, I need to do this so I can move into this role. I mean, it seems like, even if that wasn't the intention, that just kind of naturally happened throughout your career, as you said, as you learned more things, as you made connections, as you, I don't know, maybe honed what it is you wanted to concentrate on, and all of those things. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like, and I think that can be a good strategy for, maybe for people who don't know necessarily what that they want to do, or even if they want to make some kind of change, learning because you're interested in something, learning because you want to see what else is out there and what the latest is and how you can be the best at what you're already doing, I think
Yeah.
is definitely
And
a
I think it's,
strategy.
it's a great opportunity as well, because I think there is also, I feel like there's a lot of ego in this profession. And any, I think the same is probably true for human medicine. There's a lot of ego. It's like we think once we have a degree or once we have a license, like we have to know it all. We have to know everything all the time. And that, it's jack of all trades, ace of nothing, right? So hone in on the, recognize your gifts and hone in on your interests. But you know what? You're not going to know everything. So I feel like that is, I talk a lot about like professionalism too. And I think that is part of being a professional is being able to like, wow, let me collaborate or let me pick their brain on this, or, oh, this is not my area of expertise. For example, people come to me and they're like, hey, can you show us how to do dental radiographs? I am not your gal for that. That is definitely not my area of expertise, but you know what? I know a lot of amazing people. Let me connect you with them. So I think that's that. I think that academic setting really fosters that, asking questions, networking, and you get to see people with a wide range of experiences and backgrounds, and you just realize like, okay, my way or the way I thought about this is not the best way like I thought, right? It's opens you up to new ideas and ways of thinking and doing things. And I think that's really important. And I think we do not tap into that enough in our profession, especially like technicians, or teams in a hospital setting. I feel like we don't tap into that enough. I think we're our biggest network, and oftentimes because of the ego or fear of being judged or whatever, we don't tap into that. So I think that's an advantage of being in an environment that fosters learning.
I love that. Just kind of reaching out for connection, being open to learning
Mhm.
other ways. And like you said, my way may not be the best way of doing it, but maybe it's not the only way of doing it. And there may be two ways of doing it that is not necessarily one is better than the other, but it can be helpful to know another way of doing something that might be more helpful for a particular patient or a particular scenario. Um, just kind of like having more tools in your toolbox. Um, And I did want to ask you a little more about your master's degree, because we've heard about the program, the degree in the past, and I mean, I'm probably still in this, kind of state of wondering, what do most people pursue that particular master's degree for? Like, what are they intending to do with it, and what is um, what was the intention behind creating it? I know that, or at least I expect that probably there's some association with the mid level um, practitioner movement within our profession. Um, like, what was your experience like in the program, and like how do you feel, like under what circumstances, I guess, would do you feel like it would be helpful to other veterinary professionals who were sort of thinking about whether they wanted to pursue that kind of education?
Yeah, I mean, like right now, that was a big misunderstanding about the program. They're like, oh, it's a mid-level program, right? It's not. It's a master's program. There was no, and we actually, I remember an article came out about it, and we actually wrote our instructor had us write as a class to the editor of the article saying like, this is not correct. This is not a mid-level program. This is just a master's degree program, right? So it had nothing to do with the mid-level. Why were people, I did it for personal development, just a goal I wanted to reach for myself. But why did other people do it? I think for the same reasons. I really think it was a small group of people. I think maybe 7 or 8 of us graduated. And I think they were in the same situation as me. They were just, and it's refreshing to see that, right? It's refreshing to see people that they're not doing it because it's required. They're not doing it because it gives them a raise. or they just want to be the very best versions of themselves. They want to learn as much as they can, and they want to be the best technicians that they can be. So I think that's it. It sounds really cheesy, and I get it. It's not something that's doable. It's not something that's doable for everyone, right? And we need to. I think that's a whole nother can of worms. But I think something that's accessible to all people, or I think people think a lot of times, well, I can't do this because, I have, I work or I have kids or whatever. You can. It does take, you have to power through. But I do think there are a lot of, I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but I think it's important. I think there are a lot of people who start a program, whether it be an assisting program or a technician program, and they don't finish. And I don't think it's because they can't, because they don't have the talent, or they don't have the skill, or they don't have the knowledge. I think it's because sometimes they just need help with life planning and time management. And I think that's where like mentorship is, I talk to a lot of students and they're like, how did you do this? Like, I'm really struggling here. I was like, okay, let's get your schedule. Let's talk about it, So I think that was that. Then back to your original question, like it was a lot of like there's 7 or 8 people that they were in it for the same reason as me. I think just being better versions of themselves and better technicians. Yeah. So, and again, it sounds cheesy, but sometimes it's has nothing to do with getting a raise or anything like that. It's just, I just do it because I wanted to. And I've had people ask me that, like, you're getting your, when I was getting my bachelor's, why are you getting your bachelor's? Like, what's the gain in that for you? Like, what's not the gain, right? So I kind of look at it a little bit differently. It sounds kind of cheesy, but that's how I look at it.
I don't think it's cheesy to look at it the way that you do. Like, like we talked about before, like learning is, if it's a quality education and you're learning things that are, accurate and up to date and, drive the profession forward, I think that's always helpful. But I guess from the other point of view, I don't think those who look at something like this are wrong to say, well, what would the return on my investment be
Absolutely
financially
not.
if I'm
Fair
making a
question.
financial investment, particularly
Mm-hmm.
if I'm coming from a position where, in some cases we're still have questionable living wages for
Absolutely.
technicians in
Mm-hmm.
some careers. So to think, okay, how am I going to invest this money that maybe would be a struggle for me to amass to be able to pay for this education? Like, how am I going to justify that? I think that's a reasonable question to ask um, for a lot of people. So, and like you said, the answer is different for everyone in terms of whether it's feasible, whether there's any kind of support or assistance, and what the end goal is. Are they going to move into a different role? Are they going to get a promotion? Are they going to get a raise? Certainly it seems like none of those things are guaranteed, but that's helpful because I think I at least didn't really know sort of what the intended goal of that particular program was. um so yeah, it's interesting to hear your feedback. Do you know what any of your classmates have done since they graduated from the program? If any of them have moved into different roles, or are they all still doing like hands-on clinical
Um,
work? Or
I know, I believe, we follow each other on Facebook and LinkedIn and stuff like that. As far as I know, they're in similar settings. However, I do know one like went on to teach adjunct faculty at the program. So and I think that is something that's not like a there are a lot of positions that do require, it's like they say pharmaceuticals, you have to have a bachelor's, at least a bachelor's degree, or, um, you know, so I think that's something that, a door that opened, perhaps for this person, but that's the only one that I know of that's like anything different. She still does um, her clinical job. I think she's also like a supervisor. She's much more than a supervisor. Um, More like a director of, like, I think, a multi-site facility. Um, but also adjunct faculty. So, and I believe she's also involved with her state board, or state tech association, which is something that's also very important for us as
Yes,
technicians. Yep. So probably that's another can of worms that you've got on
I
tap to talk about.
do.
So
I
I
have
will
it on my
stop right
list.
there.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're definitely going there. Um, and then, just kind of in your role now, so you've completed all these degrees, you've had this amazing educational progression throughout your career, and now you're in a role where you are supporting other veterinary technicians in their career progression. Um, and I'm particularly interested in this because AHA, we commissioned a couple of studies on retention and attrition of veterinary professionals within the practice, because that's obviously a concern that our industry has right now. And career advancement opportunities have been identified, excuse me, identified as an important element in efforts to retain talented veterinary technicians. Um, so, apart from veterinary technician specialization, which I feel like is very important, and just recently maybe getting more attention than it did previously. We don't really talk about a lot of other ways for technicians to advance in their careers. You have certainly mentioned a few here today, and you did touch on the idea that in some cases it has seemed in the past like, okay, you want to progress in a practice, you like become assistant, you become a technician, then maybe you become like a lead technician, and depending on how big the practice is, then there's nowhere else for you to go if you're going to stay in that practice other than to like go into management, become a practice manager. Um, and we've talked about how for some people that's a great option and they'd be very good at it. But for others, it's really not. Like they'd rather continue to do something clinical or just have some other more like science-based, medicine-based role that is not just like HR and kind of being in charge of a bunch of other people. We don't want to feel like that's the only thing technicians can do once they sort of progress throughout their clinical work. Um, and then there's the whole, the VPA, the mid-level practitioner debate, which would definitely need to be like a whole separate conversation. Um, but I'd love to know just like your thoughts on technician career advancement in general, like where you see that going, like what other types of opportunities are out there, and sort of like how important it is to really foster that.
Yeah. So I think first off, um, something that I've learned in my career, I mentioned earlier, like we got to like stop comparing ourselves to other people, or I think it's an exciting time in veterinary medicine and for veterinary technicians, because we're at like that, we're at a pivotal point where like all this movement, I've never seen so much movement happen in such a short amount of time, right? So there's like, that means like so many opportunities for us. So I will say, um, I've learned this. It's not always going to be a carrot dangling right in front of you. It's not always an opportunity that's going to drop into your lap. So I think sometimes you have to, people will call me or email me like, hey, can I talk to you about like career pathing? I want to know my next step. And it's like, only you can determine that, right? Like, and I'm a firm believer I'm very adamant about this, and is, so and so, my boss or so and so says being a manager is my next step, or this is my next step. And I'm like, no, is that what you want? Don't ever let anyone tell you what your next step is. That they don't get that right. That's for you and you. It's your career. Your career is in your hands. The future of your career is in your hands. So, and I think it's not always going to fall into your lap. It's not always going to be clear cut and obvious, right? We are a profession of that. There are many trails to be blazed that need to be blazed. And so I think sometimes you have to step back and look at, and this is what I ask people when they say, "Hey, I want to talk about the next step for me." Okay, what do you enjoy doing? What do you get up in the morning thinking about, going to bed, thinking about whatever that like excites you, right? About your job. Well, I don't know. Okay, well, that's a problem, right? That's a problem. Like, first you need to decide, like, what are you excited about? What do you love doing? And then also, like, what do you stand for? Like, I think it's really important. Companies have mission statements and values and things like that, principles. I think as me personally, I don't know why I started doing this, and it sounds really like silly, and I didn't intentionally do it. I just kind of like stumbled upon it one day. It's like, I'm going to write a mission statement for myself. Like, what is it that I love, that I value, that I stand for, just me as a technician. And I think with those two things, you're able to discover your passion and your fire. And those things are going to change, as you progress. You're going to find new avenues and new things that you thought you didn't really realize you were passionate about, right? Like, for me, I never would have thought that ever in a million years that I would be into, regulatory affairs, practice acts, sitting on a state board, but like being, we're integrated with a AAVSB, being, state boards. And so having access to that, and it's fascinating, and it's an amazing opportunity. I never would have thought that was something that I would want to do. But, I think you have to be open-minded. Don't close off any opportunities or any windows, because I think it'll surprise you. But I think that's the first step is, what do you love doing? What are you passionate about? And I do hear people ask me sometimes, well, what's your 5-year plan? And I joke, I say, I'm just trying to make it through the week, man. I don't know what my 5-year plan is,
But such a hard question to answer. It's like, I don't know.
It is. I mean, a year from now, a year is a long time, right? So I joke, I'm like, I'm just trying to make it through the day, man. But I think, and there are people who are like, they have that gift. They're able to like, okay, this is what I want to, this is what I want to accomplish in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. And that's great. But I just am always on the lookout for new opportunities, new windows, new challenges. I think, again, going back to the ego, we don't want to take on new challenges because we don't want to fail. But we have to do that. Like, you have to take on new challenges. So, and I also, and I did want there, and you mentioned the VTSs, huge, again, wicked talent, knowledge, a brilliance that our profession has not tapped into yet. It's like they don't know what to do with them, and it's a shame, right? And it's true for technicians as well. There's that's an issue too, right? But I'm not going to get into the mid-level, but I will say the mid-level, we already have mid-levels, and that is our VTSs and our technicians, based off, state practice act, scope of practice, things like that. They are able to do so many things and maximize caseload and retention and help support our veterinarians if we just they are the experts in patient care. Doctors are medicine, surgery, they're the experts there. We're the experts in patient care, nursing care, right? And they're two very different jobs. They should gel and blend because we're all on the same team, but they are very different. And one cannot replace the other. Um, so uh, that's we don't the mid-level role, it already exists. We just don't tap into them. We don't utilize or optimize them. And I get it. We say there's depending on how you look at it, a veterinarian shortage, depending on what camp you're in. Either way, yes, there is a shortage. No, there is not. We definitely have a technician shortage. And part of that is because it's, it is like I mentioned earlier, it's a relatively newer, younger profession. And it is a profession. Like, stop calling technicians para-labor or paraprofessionals. We are professionals. So I think that's part of the issue, is that lack of respect, that lack of recognition, that lack of utilization or optimization. But I think that's that's part of the problem, is that the shortage is that it's just we're still young, right? And attracting and retaining, that's part of the issue, right? We need to make this profession of being a veterinary technician an attractive profession. And that means, I don't like to get into compensation, but it means compensation. That means, recognition and allowing. Nobody wants to, like, I say this, and again, it's going to sound cheesy, right? And kind of like, oh, you're such a simpleton. But it's not always about the compensation. Yes, it plays a large part of it, but it's not always about a compensation. If you could pay me, an insane wage, right? And if I'm just going every day and holding a dog or a cat, that is not making wise use of your investment in me, and it is not helping to retain me, because it's not challenging, and I'm not doing the things that I love to do, that I've been trained and educated to do. So I think it's not always about the compensation. I think it has a lot more to do with utilization, optimization, leveraging, and including technicians, right? It's when you sit around for rounds or developing treatment plans, or I think they are integral, like a vital part. They can provide vital information there, and they should be a part of a pre-anesthetic exam, for example. They should do their. I always say technicians should do their pre-anesthetic exam, right? And they should be part of determining the anesthetic plan, collaborating alongside the veterinarian. So that was like a really long answer, but I think and I think when we don't do these things, right, like you have hospitals or states that are like, well, we need more technicians. Okay, well, I know some hospitals or states that you say, techs, they're used interchangeably. You could be a credentialed technician or somebody off the street, and so I could tell you why you probably don't have any technicians. It's because what are you offering them, or what can they do that nobody else, that only they can do, right?
Right.
So I think when you interchange them and lump them all together, like that's not attractive, right? So
Yeah.
it's a multifaceted issue for sure. So I don't know if I answered your question. I probably went down a lot of rabbit holes.
No, I appreciate everything you said. And I want to get into tech utilization here in just a minute, but I did just want to kind of touch on one other point, and ask you about one other thing, because you've talked about like all of the many ways that technicians can grow in their so their clinical skills, their clinical abilities, and all the the roles that we're not really fully taking advantage of now, or even recognizing in terms of ways for them to grow clinically. but for some techs, moving into management is going to be the right move for them, or it is going to be what they want to do. Can you talk about ways to really support those people as they transition from a, maybe a purely clinical background to um, needing very different, at least partially different skill sets to really thrive
Mhm.
in a management role?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. The first thing, and I always say this, like, I don't care what stage in your career you're just coming into the profession, you're about ready to hang up your stethoscope and your scrubs and you're going to retire, right? Always have a mentor. Always have a mentor. And I think the very best mentor-mentee relationships are those that occur organically. There are a lot of programs now, like, Mentor Vet, and there's a lot of programs that um, help you kind of match to a mentor. And it's more of a, I don't want to say contractual, but it's more organized, right? But those organic uh, relationships, those are important. Have a mentor. So, I mean, there are 3 people, and I've had a lot of people. I've been so fortunate and blessed and lucky to stumble upon the amazing people that I've met throughout my career. But there are, you know, 3 people that come to mind that changed uh, changed my. I don't know if I would be here without them. There are things that I've experienced and opportunities I've had that I don't know that I'd be in the same spot today without them. So have a mentor. Everybody needs a mentor. And then pay it forward also. When I was an up and coming hospital manager, or an emerging leader or whatever it is that we want to call it, I had a mentor, and it was one of those organic situations. And I think being a mentor is learning. You're able to you learn what to do, right? Or you learn from their mistakes. But I think there's also things that you'll see in mentors that maybe it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this is something I should do differently, right? Because this didn't like resonate so well or whatever. But so that's the first step. Have a mentor. And I think too, it's a learning curve, and it's part of those, like, you have to take on new challenges, and sometimes I'll hear people say, well, like, yes, training is important, and that's a whole nother can of worms that we are terrible about onboarding and training, and we throw people to the wolves, and that's not setting anyone up for a success, and it's also very dangerous. But we do it we can do it in management sometimes too. It's just like, oh, here, you're the most experienced technician or assistant in the practice. Here, you're going to be the manager, or you're going to be the supervisor. And those people, they don't always make the best supervisors or managers, especially when you don't give them any development and you don't give them any coaching and any help. So you have to be willing to take that challenge, and you're going to fail. And just a failure, it's not a failure. It's a learning opportunity, a growth opportunity. So, there's a lot of programs out there now. You have like NAVTA programs for leaders, and there's the VHMA, right, the Veterinary Hospital Manager Association. So there's all kinds of, there's a lot of formal opportunities out there now, but there's also a wealth of knowledge that we don't tap into. The obvious, it's right under our nose. And that, and we often don't take advantage of that. So, honestly, I wish I could say there's like a secret sauce or a magic silver bullet, but I think that is the first step, is have a mentor. Have a mentor, be open to feedback and coaching. They say feedback is a gift, and sometimes it's a gift that we want to return, but
Yes.
the truth hurts sometimes, but it's very valuable. So, learn from it, like, be good, bad, or indifferent, like, be open to feedback, and having to have those difficult conversations, or be on the receiving end of those difficult conversations. I think, that's that. It all starts with mentorship. I'm a firm believer in that, and just not being afraid to step up to those new challenges, try something new, and learn from it. We're never going to know everything. And perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And
Yeah, me too.
I think and it's like delegation, micromanaging, and being a perfectionist. I think those are things that they're not innate. We have to learn how to do those things, right? Like how to let go, how to delegate. Yeah.
I think you're speaking to an audience of a lot of perfectionists, and hopefully former perfectionists, from those who are trying to become former perfectionists. So I'm sure that message will be heard loud and clear. And then I did want to get back to the technician utilization that you brought up before, because you shared some thoughts with me the other day when we chatted around some of the barriers that you see around technician utilization. Things like veterinarians not always trusting techs, or techs feeling like they're not being trusted, or having enough responsibility delegated to them to match their skill set, their licensure, if that's applicable, that kind of thing. Can you talk more about that, and how you would either reframe that, or what you would recommend doing to alleviate some of those challenges?
Yeah, for sure. I think first off, it's no one person or one group can solve the problem, right? We're all going to have to work together. It's like multifaceted. But some of as things that I saw and experienced as a technician, and things that I see now, I think first off, it's technician utilization, leveraging, optimization, whatever. It's really not rocket science. It's not. It's number one, you got to know your state practice act. I think a lot of the time that's not just veterinarians, that is technicians as well. Honestly, I feel like anybody working in a veterinary hospital, it would behoove you to know what you can and cannot do. Just, especially if you have a license, but really anyone, like that's advantageous to know what you as a person are able to do and not do. And, so know the practice act. And I think also we live in a litigious society, and I think veterinarians and technicians too, they can be, their license can be brought under question as well. But I think that's oftentimes a fear is, I don't think you can do this as a technician. Like, I have to do this. Actually, no, you don't. But so sometimes I think it's out of fear, but sometimes I think it's just somebody not being aware of their state's scope of practice act, and they change all the time now. Like I mentioned, I've never seen so much movement as I have lately, like in the past few years, right? We see it with states changing, and certainly we need more of this, like technicians getting title protection and loosening up the reins on levels of supervision, right? So things change all the time. And so no wonder we don't know our state practice act to a T, right? Because it's always changing. But I think that's important. So number one, you hold a license, that's a big responsibility. So know what is associated with that license, what it entails. And the next thing is, it is the relationship, that trust between a veterinarian and a veterinary technician. It's all about relationship building, right? It is not just because I have these degrees and these credentials behind my name doesn't mean that I'm going to walk into a practice and any veterinarian is going to say, hey, I trust you, do all these things. No, trust is earned. You have to build that relationship, right? And I have been so fortunate in my career to work with veterinarians that that you want to talk about how to leverage and how to utilize and optimize technicians and work as a team. Like, follow these people, right? Like, talk to these people because nobody does it better than them. But they're not going to be the same way with everyone, right? There's different levels of trust. It's all about building that relationship. And I think there is a difference between delegation. Delegation is like, here, go do this for me, or here, go do this, right? I think there is a transfer of trust between a veterinarian and a technician that have a great working relationship. There is a transfer of trust. We have built this relationship. I trust you. And so, you know what? I'm not just going to delegate this task to you, but I am entrusting you with X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be, right? So there is a difference. So I think we have to stop looking at, well, I have these credentials, and no, it's about building a relationship with that person and that trust and learning to work together. And, that happens, and that has to happen kind of organically. You can't rush that, right?
I have a question about that,
Yeah.
the idea of transfer of trust versus delegation. So is that kind of the difference between delegation is, I want you to do this, this is how I expect you to do it, this is exactly what I expect you to do, and then you come back to me and you tell me that you've done it, versus transfer of trust is, these are the things that need to be done, or this is what we're trying to accomplish. I trust you to figure out the exact specifics of how that's going to be done and do it. And I know you're going to do it, and you can let me know that you've done it, but I don't need to watch over you or know exactly how you did it, or be assured you're going to do it exactly my way. I mean, is that part of the difference?
Yeah, I think it's trust but verify, right? I think when
Right.
you have that relationship with someone, that working relationship, veterinarian and veterinary technician, you're on the same page. You've rounded on cases. You know how each other works. You know your expectations, the goals for any given patient. So you're on the same page already because you're constantly communicating. So yeah, I think it's not. You trust them to go, and you're on the same page. Cool. We know what our mission is. We always know what our mission is. Go, you do your part, and I'm going to do mine. Right? It's trust but verify.
Right.
So and this is something I'm also like super adamant about is I will hear valid argument that, well, I can't do this in my practice because a veterinarian won't let me, right? Or technicians don't do this, only doctors do in our hospital. Okay, well, have you asked? Have you asked if you could do it? And, well, no. Okay, well, that's on you. So I would go have a conversation like, hey, will you let me show you that I can do this? Or will you teach me how to do this? Right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to ask. Also, I think we have to realize that delegation and that transfer of trust is not something that is, it's not an innate skill. It is a skill that has to be learned. And I think we as technicians, we have to help veterinarians, especially like new grads, right? Newer veterinarians. We have to help them with that. And I mentioned this to you, like, when we initially talked, and it's,
Yeah.
I believe the vet schools, I think it would help if they would own some of that, right? And I know there are some vet schools already doing it, teaching in their curriculum, like what a technician is, what does their education and their training look like, because that's important. People don't realize like what all our education entails. And, this is how you can leverage them. And then, in rotations and clinicals and things like that, your technicians are part of the education process.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Then that so brings them along. And then it's like they get out, and at least this is from my perspective, they get out and and get into practice. And that's like all lost in translation sometimes, not all the time. But I think it's just something we expect them to come out being able to do, like, oh, here, delegate, transfer of trust. No, we got to like bring them
Yeah.
along and help them. And we're
Yeah.
all responsible for that. So yeah.
I can remember sometimes as a younger veterinarian, and sometimes even a not so younger veterinarian, where a very well-meaning technician would come up to me very gently and say, you don't have to do that. I'm perfectly
Right.
capable of doing that. Like, I know
Yeah.
how to do that. I do that all the time. I can take that off your plate so you can go work on your
Mm-hmm.
records, or you can go see the next case, or you can call a client
Yeah.
about blood work or something else. Like, you don't need to you don't need to have this conversation about heartworm prevention with this client. Like, I can do that.
Right.
And sometimes I'd be
Right.
like, oh,
Exactly.
you know what? You're totally right. Like,
Yeah.
you can do that. Like,
And
and
I
I know you
think,
can do that.
yes. And I think too, this is something also I firmly believe. It's for far too long, we place value on our technicians and our assistants on what they can do with their hands. Like, put in
Yeah.
a catheter. That's always the example. Like, put in a
Right.
catheter. Okay, well, we got to stop looking at that, right? Because yes, that is important, them to be able to do tactile things, but also the brain power, the critical thinking ability, right? The ability to pick up on, you know, medications and disease processes and things like that, and think through like potential side effects and, a problem solve. Like, we have to stop putting so much value on people based on what they can do with their hands, but also their knowledge and critical thinking abilities, because we live in a world, it's scary now, AI, and I think robots do surgery, and we've got to stop like putting so much value on what people can do with their hands, and start letting them spread their wings and show what they can do with their brains too.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to showcase that and exercise those additional abilities.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Um, and again, another thing that you kind of touched on before, that um, you don't necessarily hear a lot of talk about, is just how valuable and how important it can be to be involved in organized veterinary medicine, as a
Mm-hmm.
technician, and also be a part of veterinary state boards. And you've really done some amazing work on both of those fronts. So you've been involved in NAVTA, and also it's like the Georgia Veterinary Technician Association. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, you
Yep.
were past president, of the GBTA. And then you've also been involved, as you said before, the AAVSB, the American Association of Veterinary State Boards. And you were the first veterinary technician to serve on the Georgia State Board of Veterinary Medicine, which,
Yes.
congratulations,
Thank you.
that's incredible. So what has it meant to you to do that work, and then to have, a seat at some of these tables that have not always been available to veterinary technicians? What has it meant to you to like be a part of that work and be able to add to the conversation there?
Yeah, I think it's my saying is like, anytime veterinary medicine or patient care is talked about, you should always have a technician at the table, right? Because being a veterinarian and
Yeah.
being a medical, surgical expert, whatever, is different from providing patient care. That's like, we're the patient care experts, right? And one cannot exist without the other. So I think
Absolutely.
it behooves any organization or team or whatever to, anytime you're talking about veterinary medicine, always have a technician at the table, because you want a boots on the ground in their their area of expertise to weigh in. So I think that's something that it's becoming. AAVSB just released their a statement that, hey, we would really like to see, we advocate for a technician serving on every board. And that's important. That's very wise. And it's exciting. That's exciting. That's part of that movement, that we're seeing, that it's very exciting. Um, so I think, it's not always going to be, sometimes that's received well and sometimes it's not. And it's just uh, a part of that, we said, that relationship building and that building, the professionalism, that building rapport, like really showing, like, communicating in a way that shows what, the knowledge and that the thoughts that you can bring and ideas that you can bring to the table that somebody else may not have thought about. So I think a lot of it is communication and relationship building, but you're not always going to be more times more. I think a lot of times you're not going to be invited at the table. You're not going to get a seat at the table, and that's not always on purpose. It's just people just don't think to include certain people, right? But I think you have to ask. I think you have to ask for a seat at the table, and you have to kind of pop your head in and say, like, like I've said, I don't want to take over your organization. I just want to have a seat at the table, right? So that's something in Georgia that I'm super. I got a call from somebody else from another state board, and they're like, "How you guys are doing so much in Georgia? How are you able to do all this stuff?" It's because all of the professional organizations work so well together, it's not common. It is unheard of, right? Um, the Georgia State Board of Veterinary Medicine, the Georgia Veterinary Technician Association, and the Georgia Veterinary Medical Association. We work very well together. We collaborate. We realize that not one of us has all the answers, but talking through things and collaborating and spitballing off of each other, bouncing ideas off of each other. That's where it's at. And at least I haven't, NAVTA. I've always been a member. It was years ago. I served on like a committee, and Georgia Veterinary Technician Association, I'm the immediate past president, and I'm the current vice president. And then with the Georgia State Board of Veterinary Medicine, I am the current president or chair of the board. So we work closely with the GVMA, right? So that's that. It hasn't always been that way, right? It wasn't always where it's like, oh, hey, what we want to, let's talk to the GVMA, say, oh, let's talk to the GVTA and see how they feel about this. It hasn't always been that way, but because of relationship building and communication, and I think you realize that, look, we're all on the same team. Like, let's put the egos aside and the attitudes aside. We're all on the same team. And how do we work together? Because we all have the same goal, right? We just to improve this profession, improve patient care, and leave the profession in a better place than we found it. So I think it's something that has evolved over time, but again, you go back to it's building relationships and communication, and it's those not so I hate when people call it soft skills, because it is not a soft skill. Yeah. Communication, and it's very important.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the theme that I'm really noticing from like really everything that we've talked about today, and your all the things that you've done, all the the education that you've received, and the opportunities that you've been a part of, and the advice that you've given, for others. The theme that really stands out to me is this: not waiting for something to be put in front of you and offered to you, and just whether it's an educational opportunity, whether it's a job, whether it's like a responsibility, or trust to do certain tasks at work, whether it's some of these other opportunities to sit on boards and be a leader, is to just go out there and look for it, and ask for it, and maybe create it if it doesn't exist. um you've really done an incredible job of modeling that throughout your career. So I think that's such an important message for for veterinary technicians, and really for all of us, to kind of take away from this. So thank you for sharing that with us. And then as we kind of wrap up today, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I can't wait for everyone to hear it and for us to be able to kind of celebrate um, with techs as we and everyone else in our profession during Tech Week, and really going forward, because we all know we need to keep celebrating techs and keep lifting them up and in every way that we can throughout the year, just all the time. But I'd love to know one thing that you're excited about in veterinary medicine, in our industry, either something that's happening now or something that you're looking forward to happening in the future. What are you excited about?
Yeah, you know, I love this profession. I eat, breathe, and sleep it, and I wouldn't be who I am without it. It's a huge part of who I am, and the people in it. We're just a very special, unique profession, and it's a beautiful, beautiful profession, and we have the most beautiful people in it, right? Uh, because it's all about the heart, right? And it's all about the heart and the feelings and that human animal bond, which is so special. Um, so I think right now we're seeing, like I've mentioned several times, a lot of movement, we're at a pivotal point in this profession. And there's also a lot of negativity in this profession. So I would say, yeah, no profession is perfect. No hospital is perfect. No team is perfect. But you know, be the change that you want to see, right? So anybody can go on social media and blast, and be negative. But let's talk about let's address it constructively. Like, what are your solutions for it? I think there's a way to bring to light some issues that we have and opportunities that we have in a way that resonates with people, that they will listen versus just being negative. So I try to really, and I get it, it's frustrating. Like those of us I'm not a patient person. So it's like, I want to see every state I want to see title protection for everyone, and every state have a technician on their board, right? But we have to, it's a process, and just I know we all get tired sometimes of swinging. Like, it's like you're always having to justify, or you feel like you're always fighting for this, but pace yourself and focus on, again, I sound like cheesy and like a simpleton or whatever, but focus on the good things. And the good things is that there's a movement, and I believe it is the time for veterinary technicians to finally shine, right? We've got a lot of work to do, but the gates have been opened. And if we jump on this opportunity and do it in the right way, with the right way of how to communicate and bring people along with us, then I think it's an exciting time. And I think we're going to continue to see, again, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but the gates have been opened. And I think if we tackle it in the right way, then I'm excited for what lies ahead for technicians in this profession, which spills over it directly benefits veterinarians, right? And our patients and our pet owners. So I think it's a active time, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, we're definitely all in it together. So thank you for that. I
Yes.
think that's important to remember. Well, great. This has been such an uplifting conversation. I've really learned a lot from you, and I think you're such an inspiration to others out there who are maybe kind of wondering what they want to do next, or where they want to go, or how they want
Mm-hmm.
to proceed, how they want to grow, and stay within vet med. So you've given us so many great things to consider. Is there anything you'd like to share in terms of how others can find you or follow you, or reach out to you, anything like that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm always open to, anybody. I don't care where you are, who you work for. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Drop me a message, or, I say, send me smoke signals, send me a carrier pigeon. I will, whatever. Yeah, anyone can contact me. I'm happy to I enjoy that, right? Like talking to new people that are, anybody's welcome to reach out to me.